man who believed that I died 20 years ago, and I live like a man who is dead already. I have no fear whatsoever of anybody or anything.
Gary Webb. I am an investigative journalist, and in 1996, I wrote a series of stories entitled Dark Alliance, which was about CIA involvement in drug trafficking.
I knew a man who once said death smiles at us all. All a man can do is smile back.
We've opened Skull and Bones, the secret society.
It's so secret we can't talk about it.
What does that mean for America? The conspiracy theorists are going to go on.
I'm sure they are. I don't know. I haven't seen the rest.
Number 322.
I have duty to report this afternoon that my friend and colleague, Tim Russert, collapsed and died early this afternoon.
I may die in this cell tonight or in the arena tomorrow. I am a slave. What possible difference can I make?
And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.
What is going on? Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Morning Dump with Austin Picard from the Underclass Podcast. So it looks like we can basically start out hot with these stories of these arsonists effectively paving the way for this 2028 smart city infrastructure benchmark that serves as some sort of sustainable development goal, of course, in the upcoming Agenda 2030. But hope all you guys are doing well this morning. I am very tired, but we're here. But yeah, still, currently it's still effectively a state of emergency, and it's clearly been an interesting kind of formation of the narrative, especially considering the fact that it's been acknowledged widely at this point by government officials within the state of California that these fires were strategically set right by individual arsonists all around the city. So and clearly we have actual video footage of more than one of those events taking place. So good morning, brother. How you doing this morning? But yeah, if you just see the drone footage of the total destruction and aftermath of LA, entire neighborhoods, basically removed off the map, it raises a lot of interesting questions, especially considering the fact that, I was unaware. I knew that the Olympics were coming in 2028, but I did not realize that in the next few years, Los Angeles will be the host of not only the Olympics, but also the World Cup, the Super Bowl in the upcoming few years as well will be hosted here. And and then the Olympics, like I said before. So it's clearly within the sort of the framework of the agenda of Klaus Schwab. And they've said as much as far as, their benchmark goals for the state of California, and especially the city of Los Angeles. But I guess we can start by just kind of reiterating the fact that this was not some sort of naturally occurring wildfire. And I think that that's very important, especially considering Gavin Newsom's new Marshall Plan that he's kind of trotting out in his little dance with Meet the Press, which if you watch it, it does actually look like Gavin Newsom is dancing. It's so strange the way he's moving around during his statements, and which seem somewhat scripted, but also it does seem as if he has this sort of playbook that he's intended to reveal to the public, but in this deceptive manner. So, but yeah, we'll begin with just a short clip to kind of, as I said, reiterate the arson claims, because again, they're not coming from just random individuals. It's officially been acknowledged by state officials and police for that matter. So let's take a look in here, and let me share this with you, because when I first noticed that this was forming around the event as far as the arsonist factor, yeah, it instantly raised red flags for me, because this is something that has it's basically been a recycled tactic. I've seen it often utilized, especially since living out here, in the context of a lot of these wildfires, right? So it's always put into that framework of a naturally occurring wildfire event due to the dry, climate, and of course climate change, which is one of the huge parts of the narrative that is of course that duality that's playing out. Where it's either due to, as I said in one of our recent streams, that it's either falling on that political duality, that political spectrum, the two-party delusion of it's either due to the fact that Trump is rejecting climate change and called it a hoax, or it's all the wildlife management and forestry management services and the ineffective state officials, and hey, don't get me wrong, I agree that, but as far as just right inept government officials, I agree with that point, but I find it much more plausible that when these strategic goals are met and achieved, that it seems far more by design than any sort of accident. So let's check this out real quick.
Hills area. What we know right now is that the incident
Again,
occurred.
this is the Los Angeles Police Department Senior Lead Officer Charles Dinsel talking to News Nation.
What we know right now is that the incident started here, and about 30 minutes later, a suspect was detained over in Woodland Hills area by citizens.
So someone purposely set the Kenneth fire?
At this time, that's what we believe, yes.
Do you know how or why they did that?
That I don't know.
Is this a crime scene right now?
Yes.
So everything's closed off?
It's being investigated as a crime. What we know right now
Yeah,
is that
and there's also footage of course, other fires being set, and there's strange overhead footage. It almost looks like it was captured by a drone. I'm not sure what exactly the camera footage was that captured one of the arsonists as well. That was very strange, but yes. So I looked into this, and I wanted to briefly see if it was worth mentioning the fact that, as far as just the Daily Mail article that has definitely been circulating since these claims have been made, and so basically, firefighter reveals two men were caught on camera lighting fire just before Palisades blaze erupted in L.A. I'll share the article with you guys, but it is it's at the least, again, it's worth acknowledging. So, two men are said to have been caught on camera dumping gasoline and setting it alight immediately before the devastating Palisades fire broke out. DailyMail.com has learned exclusively. Let's see. Darn That Dragon says the woman getting in his face and catching him faking being on the phone while he likely had a full security detail is 100% staged. Interesting. Okay, so a resident of the ritzy celeb-packed area reported the video to a senior firefighter once the flames had started consuming the area. By then, we were too busy, the firefighter told Daily Mail. We told him to take the video to the police. But what happened to the footage remains a mystery, as cops have not confirmed that the uncontrollable blaze, which has caused damage in the billions of dollars, was set deliberately. Now, again, we've had many different state officials make that claim. Now, as far as legitimately acknowledged by the by the establishment authorities. Not entirely certain if this has become the legitimate claim, because again, I've seen so many different false narratives and misconceptions being floated out to the public in the context of right, attempting to make this about climate change, or right, politicize it to the extent to where it becomes this political football, this partisan football that you can toss around during this transition period. And of course, it gains. You always have to consider the fact that these states are always vying for more funding, right? And so again, this is a current state of emergency out here in LA, and so in California, they're getting a lot of federal aid at this point. I recently saw Newsom, even as he's criticizing Trump, he's also acknowledging the fact and commending him for kind of aiding in the facilitation of the federal aid to the state. So yeah, that's definitely playing a role here in regard to the certain narratives being perpetuated by the media. So we always have to keep that in mind, that these government officials are consistently trying to line their pockets and stage these agenda items to be achieved. So you have to sort of have that funding coming down the pike and waiting in the wings, and that you can rely on. Otherwise, you could run into certain issues, potentially needing to be overthrown as an ineffective governor. But either way, Gavin Newsom has done more than his share of achieving these horrific benchmarks for our future dystopian reality. So again, we'll after we get through with a couple more minutes of this article, or just to kind of finish off this article, we'll get a little bit more into Gavin Newsom and his Marshall Plan for LA 2.0, which again falls perfectly in line with Agenda 2030 and Operation Lockstep and the Great Reset. So there's no way around it in my mind, but I do, and I will. I just can't imagine changing my perspective on this two-party delusion kind of achieving the exact same goal set, right? So despite the political spectrum, we remain on the same path, right? And that is a very eye-opening thing once you become aware of that fact. I appreciate you guys. And so let's read a little bit more of this. So it says, news of the video comes amid growing suspicions of arson or foul play after one person was arrested for allegedly starting another blaze, the Kenneth Fire, on Thursday, police said. The man has not been charged. 2 days before that incident, a senior firefighter was one of the first on the scene, battling the original Palisades blaze with his crew on North Piedra Morada Drive at the top of the Highlands Palisades neighborhood, when a resident approached him with a shocking claim. We had a resident come to us and said he got a video of two men dumping gas and lighting it off, said the LAFD official, who asked to remain anonymous. The subsequent fire grew to almost 20,000 acres and wiped out most of the elite Pacific Palisades neighborhood. All right. Also, keep in mind, I've had, and I considered this, but it's also my mind kind of was trying to, figure out the dynamics of how you could control a fire at that level. It just as far as directing it, to certain areas, right? And only, for sort of this thought experiment, right? And so then I was thinking, okay, well, maybe the UFO sightings above the fires, right above the blaze during these fires, maybe they could have been, right, some sort of strategic technology that's been implemented to kind of direct these events on the ground in certain ways, by also utilizing the fire department and various other elements. to achieve that, only in the framework of kind of the, again, this thought of experiment and this theoretical idea of how you could potentially create this effective destruction of incriminating evidence, right? Which I've had a lot of different people kind of mention that as a possibility, because due to the fact that a lot of the damage, a lot of the property damage, um, you know, were in these areas of, let's say, the Getty Museum, right? Which has, I mean, there have been implications of tunnel systems under the Getty Museum, and systems of trafficking and abuse for a long time, and especially the fact that apparently there used to be this I mean, very effective underground subway system in Los Angeles that was utilized by the public for years and years, and then shut down at one point. And I'm not entirely certain of the reasons why. But yeah, I know that there have been active tunnel systems under the city for a long time, and so anyway, uh, the fact is that you see like Hunter Biden's home burned down, right? And you can't help but I saw plenty of statements kind of, right, mocking that idea, but of course he's already essentially, been pardoned, so it's not as if there's any real concern there, but who knows, right? That you never know what's possible, especially thinking that, the Diddy evidence and things of that nature, the implications of people in these powerful positions are just very prominent celebrities who, it's not time for their image to be destroyed, right? Like they have too much usefulness and utilization and effectiveness for their handlers, essentially, and so that's kind of where my mind goes. And so only just considering this as a kind of an interesting, you know, again, a thought experiment, mainly because I've seen all these interesting claims circulating online about destruction of incriminating evidence, and again, with the amount of just wealthy individual homes that were destroyed, it's very possible. I mean, just as far as collateral damage is concerned alone. So let's see if there's anything else worth mentioning here. Multi-million dollar houses destroyed by the fire include homes belonging to stars Miles Teller, Anna Faris, Paris Hilton, Eugene Levy, Anthony Hopkins, and Billy Crystal. The LA County Sheriff's Department responded to Daily Mail requests for comment, but failed to answer questions about reports of arson despite repeated requests. On Thursday, the LA Police Department told Daily Mail they have not received any reports of arson related to the Palisades fire. Investigators are considering an array of possible ignition sources for the apocalyptic, fast-moving fires, but so far there has been no official indication of arson in the blazes, sparking utility lines, one of the most common igniters. What the hell's wrong with me? Of wildfires have not been identified as a cause either. Of course, guys. Good morning, Namrock. Appreciate you, brother. What's up? What is this? Somnambulist. Okay, I'm not going to try and pronounce that, buddy, but of course, you're welcome. All right, so yeah, it looks as if they're sort of deflecting away from the arsonist narrative in this article, even though there have been so many significant claims, and not only that, but evidence of it as well through just the footage alone, proving the fact that it was clearly started intentionally, right? And I think that, again, worth recognizing that fact, right? And so let's see, what else do we have here? I definitely had despite the fact that, of course, we had mentioned the just the aftermath alone, right? Looking very much like some sort of thermite bomb landed in the Pacific Palisades, and and again, it's melting glass, right? I mean, no wildfire I've seen has affected the area in such a way where it identically resembles that of Maui. Um, but of course, we're intended to accept that at face value and just fall into that, pre-established narrative that's been laid as a trap for us ideologically and philosophically, and that will usher through the totalitarian agenda and in more ways than one. So again, we have to be headstrong, especially in the moment when these events such as these manufactured crises, in my mind, occur. That is when we have right more so than any other time. That is when it's most important. So let's hear what Klaus Schwab's vision is for uh, Los Angeles. All right, and I think that is something worth knowing.
Angeles is one of the automatically guided car, a self-driven car, will come to your hotel or wherever you are and will bring you to the airport. Actually, I had a discussion some months ago with the mayor of Los Angeles, and you know Los Angeles is one of the cities with the heaviest traffic, who told me in 2030, Los Angeles will be private car-driven free. And this will allow to transform highways into parks and other public spheres.
All right. So, of course, that's involving the natural asset corridors of Agenda 21. Again, these continuity of government protocols portrayed to the public as sustainable development goals. It's a tale as old as time, and it's something that the Club of Rome has been imagining for generations at this point. And so again, this is the map here of the fires, and it's very interesting to notice the fact that they were all sort of strategically started in various locations that seem to be intentionally as far as just the geographical area where they were started. It makes sense that an arsonist would have ignited the fires. So beyond that, we have another World Economic Forum young global leader, Andrew Ross Sorkin, who has a statement he would like to make as far as his vision for our future in this very interesting agenda playing out before our eyes.
There's going to be people of means who are going to travel, and then there's going to be people maybe of lesser means who might actually be able to use an Oculus or...
Exactly, brother. So he's Royal Deluxe says, Agenda 2021 territory split into zones like Hunger Games. Yeah, they effectively become no-go zones. I'll get into it in a moment, but yeah, it's the vision for the future. It's dystopian. There's no doubt in my mind, and it is something. What's up, brother? Abrogate these. How you doing? And it's this vision that is undeniably taking shape, and so again, they are mocking us. They are outright smearing it in our faces while shoving it down our throats, and we accept it and embrace it as progress. And what a diabolical framework and strategic deception. I mean, it's brilliant if it weren't so psychopathic in nature and sociopathic, right?
An Oculus or a Magic Leap or some other kind of device to travel to the same place, but from their own couch. But in many ways, it's actually going to create even more distance between those two people. That psychologically, and I think that we've experienced this through social media. In many ways, it's brought people closer in certain ways, but actually created this remarkable divide because
you see that little cheeky smile, that smirk. These people are, my God, they're sadistic, right? They are very much enjoying these achievements.
There's going to be people of means who are going to travel, and then there's going to be people maybe of lesser means who might actually be able to use an Oculus or a Magic Leap or some other kind of device to travel to the same place, but from their own couch. But in many ways, it's actually going to create even more distance between those two people that psychologically, and I think that we've experienced this through social media. In many ways, it's brought people closer in certain ways, but actually created this remarkable divide because it's even more visible, actually, the divide in certain ways. There's going to be people of means who are going to travel,
Wow.
and then there's going to be people.
That is a dystopian future, no doubt. And again, it just perfectly resembles the underclass, right? That this philosophical notion that I've kind of leaned into, which is, the divide, that gap that we cannot seem to bridge, right, between the elite aristocracy, the aristocratic oligarchs, and the vast underbelly, right, of the peasant serfdom, again being corralled into these terrible ideas and ideological frameworks that most of us seem to be really unaware of as well, right? It's something that you have to put in the effort and the discipline in order to kind of critically assess the reality for yourself, and then only then can you sort of reject this false framework. But again, as we've said too many times at this point, um they continue to just say these things out loud, and apparently we aren't listening, which or we're justifying these things, right? And what I find so strange is the vast majority of people, you know, seemingly just the naivete of believing that your best interests are at heart when it comes to these strange politicians, right? And these strange elitists who very clearly can't even imagine the lifestyle that we have to that we just as an average person, the average lifestyle, they couldn't even imagine having to live in our shoes for 24 hours, right? And they despise us for questioning them, right? These goals and these visions and benchmarks for the future. And so again, it's like this sort of subversion of subverting the karmic consequences we've said before. And so they provide us the rope to hang ourselves. And if you're not aware enough, right, to reject that, then it essentially becomes it's on you, right? And if that is the philosophy behind it, yeah, I just need to know more, right? It's just so strange. Namrock says normie liberals love these shows about totalitarian futures and like to convince themselves they'd be the ones resisting it. Exactly. Yeah, they truly do. And it is so strange to see people acting as if they're living under this oppressive this oppressive styled government and state without even effectively identifying their enemy, right? It's just so strange. And it's worse than even that. Not only are they unable to identify their enemy, right? They embrace their enemy as their heroes, right? And then they blindly support them and follow them to the depths of hell, while rejecting the people around them who have their best interest at heart, their family and friends, and people with some sort of ethical foundation. But that's by design, once again. So let's listen into the host, Fox host Jesse Waters, who of course happens to be hosting the Olympics in 4 years, and listen to his opinion here.
This is biblical level destruction. And the city of LA is hosting the Olympics in 4 years. There's no way we can showcase LA to the world. A full federal takeover is needed. Invoke the Stafford Act. The state's overwhelmed. Martial law. might have to be declared.
All right. Yeah, they straight up are just frothing at the mouth when it comes to what they could potentially achieve in Los Angeles. Yeah, well, I don't care at all about the Olympics, my buddy, but here's the problem is that the Olympics are basically an ancient pagan ritual playing out on the world stage. All right. And so once you realize how important these ceremonies are for the world order, right? And also for kind of the degrading tactics of the right of kind of the inverted moral landscape, right? And so yeah, it's again, it has really has nothing to do with me being any like really any concerned about the Olympics coming to LA. I just think that it's sort of interesting because it provides this strange pretext of, you know, um facilitating the agenda at a faster rate, right? So it's kind of like they have this time frame that they're working with. Okay. And so um let's listen to Gavin Newsom's little dance he did on Meet the Press, because it really is revealing and eye-opening as far as what the plan is, this Marshall Plan that they're attempting to achieve here and LA 2.0. And so um again, this Gavin Newsom is just it's so ridiculous, realizing his connections to special interest groups and Pelosi and that they obviously have very big plans in mind for what Gavin could potentially achieve throughout his political career, and he has in more ways than one just entirely destroyed the city of Los Angeles and uh, and had quite the effect on the state overall. But yeah, watch his
You've
little
also
dance here on Meet the Press.
called for an independent investigation into the issues around water supply that we've seen. What are the questions that you're hoping to answer?
The same ones you're asking, same ones that people when I'm in the streets are asking, yelling about. What the hell happened? What happened to the water system? Was it, and by the way, was it just overwhelm that you had so much that was used, we drew it down? Was it pipes? Was it electricity? It was a combination of pipes, electricities, and pumps. What was that drawdown? Impossible, because you lost 7,000+ structures right here anyway, and every single structure we lost had a pipe that was leaking, and we'd have lost that water pressure anyway. Did it contribute in any way to our inability to fight the fire, or were 99-mile-an-hour winds determinative and there was really no firefight that could have been more meaningful? So all of us want to know those answers, and I just don't want to wait, because people are asking me. I want to know those facts. I want them objectively determined, and that the chips fall where they may. This is not about finger pointing.
You say what to people who insist that these independent investigations or calls for them? Are you passing the blame on to other people?
I'm not, how could it be when we're doing an independent investigation and we just want the adjudication of the facts? As I say, it's not about finger pointing. It's about answering the questions you and everybody wants answered. And I think there's a propensity to wait to answer those questions. And people want immediacy. They want response and responsiveness. And so that's the idea.
Ultimately here, does the buck stop with you?
I mean, you're governor of California. You might as well be the mayor of California. We're all in this together. We're all better off. We're all better off. We're all better off. And we're working together to take care of people and to make sure people are supported. We're empathetic. And we're here not just in the immediacy of the crisis, but we're here after the crisis, as opposed to creating a crisis in the middle of this by trying to divide people and play political, take cheap political shots.
Do you have faith in Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass?
I have absolute faith in our community. I have faith in our leaders. I have the faith of our capacity to work together.
President-elect Trump has blamed you for this crisis. He called you incompetent. What's your response?
Well, I called for him to come out, take a look for himself. We want to do it in the spirit of an open hand, not a closed fist. He's the president-elect. I respect the office. We have a president of the United States that within 36 hours, provided a major disaster declaration over a text. We had support from the President of the United States, Joe Biden, with 100% reimbursement, all the resources you could hope for or imagine, constant communication. I'd like to extend that to the President-elect. I don't know what he's referring to when he talks about the Delta smelt in reservoirs. The reservoirs are completely full. The state reservoirs here in Southern California, that mis and disinformation, I don't think advantages or aids any of us. Responding to Donald Trump's insults, we would spend another month. I'm very familiar with them. Every elected official that he disagrees with, very familiar with them.
We do know, though, from reporting here locally that that one reservoir that serves the Palisades was not full.
And that's exactly what triggered my desire to get the investigation to understand what was happening with that local reservoir. That was not a state system reservoir, which the President-elect was referring to as it relates to the Delta and somehow connecting the Delta smelt to this fire, which is inexcusable because it's inaccurate, also incomprehensible to anyone that understands water policy in the state.
American Psycho over here. All right, so that's he's just, you see him actually physically going through this strange dance while he's trying to wiggle his way through this conversation on this interview, which it's just so like every single bit of mainstream media is just so freaking staged, man, and I can't stand it. Yeah, his movements literally look like a puppet. Like, I know they truly do. It's amazing. So look at this last video of old Gavin Newsom, and then we'll pivot here to something different. But it's still, again, like, is this not just par for the course when it comes to just at this point? I'm not at all shocked anymore. I just expect it now, and I do my best to not kind of play around with confirmation bias at all times. But it's just when it's so overtly in your face, and there's so little, just it's disrespectful, right? There's, I mean, it's again, I've said before, like you can't make me run away faster than if you treat your audience as if they're unintelligent, right, and ignorant, and maybe that puts me in a bad position occasionally because I expect people to know a little bit more than I would say the average person might have been exposed to or aware of. So I'll occasionally kind of just speak over certain people's heads, which I'm sure you guys run into that problem, especially considering a lot of these just in extraordinary cases, and where, I mean, you can point to the details, and if you really know any of the intricate details as far as in a comprehensive way, that alone is almost kind of if just having a conversation with the average person who isn't quite aware of a lot of this and plugged into it, it almost kind of becomes a threat to their intellect in some sort of way, so they shut down. And I've had that happen where people, and it's always sort of, you have to kind of realize the role that you've played, right, in the presentation of these ideas. And so it's something I've really tried to work with or work on, as far as, because the last thing I want is to kind of create more dispute with, especially between people who I only want the best for. I truly just, in the context of family and friends who I have their best interest in mind. The last thing I want is to sort of, further facilitate that divide, right? So I do my best to kind of present a lot of these good ideas. I appreciate you, CJ Games. Good to see you too. But I really try and kind of repackage a lot of these ideas depending on who I'm having the conversation with. And I think it's kind of the best way to approach it, and maybe the only way, because otherwise, as I said, people will shut down run away kicking and screaming, or even worse, attack and target the messenger, right? So if any way, in if you in any way want to make a difference in a positive manner, then you have to approach people kind of on their terms, which it's unfortunate that that is the way of the world. But in the current state of things, the way we're socially conditioned, man, it is crazy how, sensitive people are, right? To new ideas. I mean, my God, they get very upset. So, um, anyway, if you question, reality itself and the very paradigm you exist within, then yeah, you have to kind of keep in mind that you have to restructure that paradigm for your own good, right? But it seems kind of terrifying for some people because they don't know where to begin, and I'm all too familiar with that feeling. But um, you gotta start. And as far as like, there's no better place to start than now, or better time to start than now, as far as that's concerned. And this is the awakening process, right? And I hope to God the Great Awakening is occurring, as much as I'm concerned that the strategic reaction to it is to, again, kind of corral everyone back into this establishment line, this stavishment fold, these false narratives and misconceptions. And so, yeah, that's my ultimate priority at this moment, is kind of staving off all of these, strategic goals that are being presented in order to deceive us, and, attempting to kind of break apart those misconceptions, and really just effectively destroy the false narrative as much as possible. So let's see, what are you guys saying here? Most people don't want to even have a general small talk. I know, it's very sad that that's the case. But I know that during COVID, when I was out here in LA, or, well, still am, but throughout COVID, man, it made me, I mean, I wasn't really much to kind of force my ideas on a random person anyway. You had to really kind of offer up the opportunity, as sort of like presenting it to me in a way where I think, okay, I could get away with this conversation. Um, for me to feel safe, right? In that sort of context. But but it was strange because throughout COVID, I just basically shut down, man. I just put in the earphones, listen to podcasts or whatever, right, while I was working, and listen to audiobooks or whatever I could to feel less alone in the context of my ideas. And yeah, it was a nightmare attempting to go through a general conversation while I'm sitting here thinking about Project Crimson Contagion and Event 201 and a tabletop simulation staging COVID, right? And and know the history of right of vaccines. Well, I need to be careful on YouTube, I guess, as much as I don't self censor. I already I already got a warning for talking about the war in Ukraine, so I better be careful. Like, it makes no sense, especially in the context of how I was speaking about the conflict. But yeah, I guess you can't call it a proxy war or something. But anyway, it's a very sensitive subject at this moment. So the fact that I was even, given that warning as far as my monetization process is just like, wow. I've barely even been able to monetize, and I'm already getting, reprimanded by the the overlords at the tech overlords at YouTube. So, but yeah, so we just have to, again, it's very sad that it kind of turned out that way during COVID, but it everything became so politicized that, again, it's an impossibility to have just basically just a regular average conversation without it kind of, you know lingering into those areas, right, of political interest. And then you would you would accidentally reveal that, right, you have a difference in ideas, and then the wall would go up, right? Or even worse than that, I remember I was running a small um just some small store with that had a grocery section, and had a, you know, in Palmdale, right? In Lancaster and Palmdale, was where I was working. And yeah, I was just running this store up there in the high desert during COVID. And I'll never forget, because we were forced to stage the store, right? And then I got a promotion, and was running the store at the time. And so I'm getting all this flack from right, from district, and all this stuff for not wearing a mask, and everything. And while I'm being forced to stage the store for these ridiculous um you know COVID restrictive measures, right? And meanwhile, you remember all the ridiculous claims about frontline workers being like promoted, and at least thought of in this positive light because of what they were offering to the public during this time of crisis. And yeah, it was ridiculous. But either way, um, I'm at the store, dealing with the most theft you could ever imagine in just a terrible, terrible community. Crime stricken, overran, just, a prison in the area, basically this criminal pipeline had been set up from South Central Los Angeles all the way out there to the high desert for, over 20 years. They've been shipping prisoners, and it was very, basically, it was this gentrification pipeline. It was a very interesting situation and a crazy experience living up there. But yeah, right, having to reprimand mothers for using their children to attempt to steal groceries and things of that nature. And not don't get me wrong. This isn't some sort of thing where right, like they're in need, and I'm talking obese, right? Like, no, and they're stealing things that clearly this is not like a loaf of bread type of situation. But still, this was just my personal experience, right? And I don't want to get too carried away. The point being is that, right, I had people come up where I'd have to go up to the front and help out or whatever, and or you know answer questions, or whatever the case was. I'd get called up, and I'd have to go up there and deal with some of these people. And and I'll never forget that, just having, like, when I was finally told that they would fire me if I didn't put on the stupid ass mask, and I had no choice, and this is what I was told by district. um you know Man, I had it, like, basically on my chin, right, as much as possible. And so anyway, I'll just never forget, I had people come up to me, filming me, right, with their phones, just right up in my face, man, right? And yeah, as if they're going to expose me to the public for my wrongdoing. And yeah, so again, we all remember those terrible dynamics going on during COVID. But again, very isolating, right? Very isolating. And so it's just not at all anything that you know not at all anything that really should surprise any of us. But the mere fact of the matter is that you know to have to go through that, and then, as I said before, it kind of makes a lot of sense why I was desperate to find like-minded people that I could spend my time around, and workshop ideas with. Because yeah, in the end, it that's all that really matters, is trying to implement a moral fabric that you can live by, a foundation worthwhile, right? And so, yeah, you have to go through experiences sometimes that are, I think, will really only help you in the end. and in the long run. And that's essentially how I feel about that experience personally. But all right, our last Gavin Newsom video is his suggestion of this Marshall Plan, this vision of LA 2.0, which again, we just saw Klaus Schwab talking about his conversation with the LA mayor, and again the 2030 agenda benchmarks that are just undeniable at this moment. When you see them taking form and shape, around us, then how can we reject this as the plausible outcome as far as the strategic goal set? So let's listen into Governor American Psycho.
Over the course of the next several years, Los Angeles will be host to the World Cup and then the Super Bowl and then the Olympics. With this rebuilding effort needing to take place, is LA going to be ready for all of those global events?
My humble position, and it's not just being naively optimistic, that only reinforces the imperative moving quickly, doing in the spirit of collaboration and cooperation. President of the United States, Donald Trump, to his credit, was helpful in getting the Olympics to the United States of America, to get it down here in LA. We thank him for that. This is an opportunity for him to shine, for this country to shine, for California and this community to shine. The opportunity with all of that and all that opportunity and that pride and spirit that comes from not just hosting those three iconic games and venues, but also the opportunity, I think, to rebuild at the same time. And that's why we're already organizing a Marshall Plan. We already have a team of looking and reimagining LA 2.0. And we're making sure everyone's included, not just the folks on the coast, people here that were ravaged by this disaster.
You just said you're organizing a Marshall Plan for the rebuilding of California. What is that Marshall Plan? Tell us about this Marshall Plan.
We're just starting to lay out. I mean, we're still fighting these fires. So we're already talking to city leaders. We're already talking to civic leaders. We're already talking to business leaders and nonprofits. We're talking to labor leaders. We're starting to organize how we can put together a collection of individuals on philanthropy for recovery, how we can organize the region, how we can make sure that we are seeking federal assistance for the Olympics more broadly, but also federal assistance for the recovery efforts, and how we can galvanize the community with folks that love this community to really develop a mindset so that at scale, we're dealing with the scope of this tragedy and responding to it at scale with efficiency, like the executive order I talked about, time value of delivering projects, addressing building codes, addressing permitting issues, and moving forward to rebuilding and being more resilient.
Man, build back better, son. That this is just you couldn't be more overt with these policy positions for the Great Reset. I mean, this is Agenda 21. This is Agenda 2030. And yeah, here's the picture of Hunter Biden's Malibu home burned to the ground by the LA fire. My God. So I think what this reminds me of, by the way, is of course when I covered Agenda 21 on the Underclass podcast, and yeah, I just saw somebody say, yeah, granola grin, brother, a historical precedence for any major event like the pandemic or these LA wildfires that warrants questions, concerns, and conversation is the old saying, never let a good crisis go to waste. Exactly. This is their philosophy. They always find a way to manipulate the masses in times of crisis to enrich themselves. Yes, sir. Granola grin, you're my brother. Gavin, I'm stoked Newsom. He's definitely stoked. I don't know what's up with that dude, but I'll never forget during COVID, right, when that same thing, that sort of dynamic that we alluded to on the last live stream regarding Trump at Carter's funeral with Obama, and just kind of like, right, that political theater being overtly exposed to the public, and it happens often, right, where they slip up and they don't really respect our intellect as it is, so they're not concerned that there's going to be some real awakening. And once we come to the realization that they work together to accomplish these strategic goals. It's still it just right. My first thought is just kind of when you witness like the bipartisanship, right? When it comes to these goal sets, then when they strategically achieve these exacted same agenda items in different ways, just extraordinarily different presentation, right? But in reality, it facilitates the exact same policy. So this is the Henry Kissinger, vision for the future, right? When in the terms of Confessions of an Economic Hitman, and it reminded me of his quote from what I used in Agenda 21, because it alludes to all of this where um, basically it's the Delphi method, right? It's this appeal to authority, right? And we've been so conditioned. We've been so conditioned to just fall into the trap of worshiping authority, right? And power itself. And so when you're insulated from any real accountability in the system as it is currently structured, which is clearly the case, right? I mean, come on. We haven't had any government accountability for generations. I mean, God. But it's hilarious to me that anybody believes that Tony Fauci or anything will be done in regard to the COVID agenda. They achieved things, I think that, right, they had strategic goals in mind, but in more ways than one, these manufactured crises achieve more than they could even imagine, right? And I think that happens far too often, right? And on a frequent basis. And so when you're aware of the Delphi method and these various techniques that they utilize in order to kind of, again, seed the landscape with these deceptive misconceptions, right? Then it all begins to make sense. And so the Delphi method, and which is something we have to all be aware of if we want to protect ourselves as far as just our intellectual framework and philosophy and perspective, then we have to know these clandestine methods of deception that are being implemented on the world stage, and especially to control the domestic population, and it's all in this grand scheme of full spectrum dominance, right, and psychological control. And so you have all these social engineering techniques that have been sophisticated over time, and they are very effective and very efficient, and utilizing Hollywood and utilizing the celebrity culture that is just, man, it deeply affects especially our youth, but I think it has more of an effect on just the overall population in general, because we all have these terrible tendencies to just, I would say, run into these. Well, I would say we're always looking for a way out when it comes to winding down, having some sort of relaxation process. So we go to cinema or we go to, right. But the issue is that they've been controlling through production studios. I mean, we already know. I'm covering Mockingbird and the fact that they created this liaison to the CIA through Hollywood, and the Laurel Canyon situation with Lookout Mountain Laboratory, and all of these various infiltration tactics as far as the system of esoteric Hollywood as it's currently structured today, and the sort of compromising it for their own benefit. It was always that case. I mean, that was always the case as far as I'm concerned. That's why you can go as far back as the original nuclear bomb tests and the atom bomb tests, and that footage is so crazy. It's just absolutely ridiculous. And I remember I think it was Andreessen that went on Rogan, and they actually talked about um, they showed footage of those bombings and how it was so clearly edited because one of them had a car parked behind the house, and in the next slide is supposed to be the exact same footage. There's no car. It's just like there's so much going on, and as of course, you already know my position on the moon landing. If you've listened to me for very long at all, then you're aware of my perspective on what I believe to have happened is that it was filmed at Lookout Mountain Laboratory, the moon landing itself, and knowing the intelligence military connections to Rand Corporation and every other just you talk about special interest group who not only steers policy for domestic United States and well foreign policy as well. It's not at all isolated to only domestic policy, but Rand Corporation is very much a usual suspect when it comes to these things. So it's kind of interesting because anyway, I'm getting carried away. My whole point here was the appeal to authority in the Delphi method. So the point being is this Delphi technique. I just mentioned the Rand Corporation, and that it's ridiculous because of how deeply tied in they were to the Laurel Canyon scene at the time, and the birth of the countercultural revolution, which was clearly, a psychological operation and a way to, compromise and condemn the true anti-war movement that was authentic and genuine at the time and organic truly, and this was a way to crack down on the anti-war protests at the time. And man, if you learn about the strange synchronicities and intricate details of what they were doing to these student protesters during the anti-Vietnam protest movement. My God, man, they were passing out poison candy, like military intelligence assets working for the CIA, as local, Washington D.C. metropolitan police officers. Right? They're actually involved in intelligence operations. They're actually in an intelligence unit that was specifically created to infiltrate local police departments. And this was every individual a part of this basically held dual loyalty to military intelligence, right? And so they're going around to these anti-war protest movements, and I mean, they're staging these crises like far worse than January 6th, right? And worse than that, they're poisoning, killing dissidents, right? So you're talking innocent civilians only dissenting against and rejecting the foreign policy of the United States and the Pentagon, who's clearly exploiting their taxpayer dollars for these international conflicts that benefit the establishment and only this small group of elite bureaucrats and oligarchs, dynastic families that have been profiting off of the opium trade and right and all of this for just longer than you could ever imagine. And meanwhile, you have this hidden hand that is not so hidden. It's very overt and in our faces. It's just, it takes time to track the thread, right? And once you do, yeah, no longer do you fall into that naivete. And so so the Rand Corporation developed this Delphi technique post World War II in the 1950s, and it has been applied a number of ways. Officially defined as a structured communication technique or method relying on a panel of experts to reach a consensus and develop professional guidelines accordingly. So again, this is an appeal to authority, right? And this is very similar to the Henry Kissinger quote that I was reminded of earlier, when he was confessing that an expert is just someone who articulates the needs of those in power. And that is so accurate, right? Especially in context with COVID and right. And as far as you remember, the fact checking experts that have oversaturated this alternative media landscape and the social media platforms for how long. And so, yeah, that's exactly what they utilize these various experts for. And so the Delphi method assumes that group judgments are more valid than individual judgments. Even the name itself has roots in the occult and derives from the ancient oracle of Delphi, which, obviously plays into the Delphi murders that, right, which I recently covered. But however, many people believe that the method was actually developed as an underhanded management organizational technique with the true purpose of collectively bringing people to a predetermined outcome through the provided illusion of having a voice in crafting the outcome themselves. There's nothing more accurate than that in regard to Agenda 2030 and these sustainable development goals and continuity of government protocols. That is the framework. So, yeah, it's the capstone doctrine. The limits to growth, right? Effectively um, convincing that humanity, right? That we are the enemy. I mean, it couldn't be more diabolical. So, in the context of climate change, okay, well, let's consider this: Limits to Growth, The First Global Revolution, a book written by Alexander King and Bertrand Schneider, published in 1991 as a follow-up to their earlier 1972 work product from the Club of Rome, titled The Limits to Growth. The book's tagline reads, "A report by the Council of the Club of Rome." The book was intended as a blueprint for the 21st century, putting forward a strategy for world survival at the onset of what they called the world's first global revolution. Officially, the product of a think tank. Now, does this not sound like the way you would strategically redraw the world stage into this globalist framework, right? The 10 territories of the New World Order, right? So let's see, officially the product of a think tank. The book attempted to transcend the nation-state governance paradigm of the 19th and 20th century and sought a way to eliminate some of the challenges seen inherent with those older systems of global governance. So ESG, environmental social governance, it is a positive that Trump is allegedly opposed to that. Because it is very clearly a tool within the concept of the Great Reset and Agenda 2030. But yeah, it's very interesting. But it seems like there are just certain politicians are willing to go to bat for certain interest groups, right? And so that's kind of what I always imagine is happening, and you can clearly trace those connections. But anyway, in one of the most controversial sections of the book, they expose their true intentions by perfectly representing the psychopathy behind this Malthusian authoritarian agenda, claiming that because of the sudden absence of traditional enemies, new enemies must be identified. The common enemy of humanity is man. In searching for a new enemy to unite us, we came up with the idea that pollution, the threat of global warming, water shortages, famine, and the like would fit the bill. All these dangers are caused by human intervention, and it is only through changed attitudes and behavior that they can be overcome. The real enemy, then, is humanity itself. And that is, I think, the philosophical pretext here. So, yeah, they've redefined progress, and And this is a deceitful orthodoxy, as I said in my episode, right? Which, knowing, John Perkins and reading his book, Confessions of an Economic Hitman, and realizing how they kind of achieve these manipulative, agenda items. It really becomes very clear, especially knowing the level of involvement of Henry Kissinger and his mentorship of Klaus Schwab and Kissinger's connection to the Pilgrim Society and all these various fraternities, fraternal organizations, right? And they're really just secret societies, right? Which I watched it's crazy. I watched it took me forever, but I finally watched Martin Scorsese's movie, The Killers of the Flower Moon, right, about the Native American Osage. Anyway, it was interesting. A lot of these movies are so woke. It's a difficult, prospect of sitting there for over 3 hours. But I've always been a fan. So I wanted to finally sit through it and see if it was worthwhile, right? And so I checked it out, and it was very strange because it was a good movie. But still there's this moment where Leonardo DiCaprio's character he's basically made a mistake, and he's about to witness, the real true, sadist and, threatening character that is behind the presentation of Robert De Niro's character, right? Given that he presents to the vast majority of the town and the public to try and act as if he's not some evil snake behind the scenes, right? And so Leonardo DiCaprio goes to meet with Robert De Niro's character, and as he arrives to this building, I noticed before he walks in, there's a symbol on the door, and it was Freemason, right? It was just the symbol of the Freemason order, and I paused it before anything was said, and we transitioned to the next scene, and I told my wife, "Look at that symbol," and I just told her what it was, and then he opens the door, goes inside, and then I see the symbols all over the place. There's and the first thing you see is De Niro and one other man standing at this pulpit with an old book on and then you see a single chair in the middle of the room on this black and white checkered floor, which is very symbolic within the occult aspect of things. And yeah, I see the same symbols all over the pillars and stuff in the room, and then he sits down, or no, he's told, they remove the book and they tell him to go stand and put his elbows on the platform where the book was, and De Niro reveals to him that he's a 32nd degree Freemason, and then proceeds to punish him for his mistakes, right? And as an adult, as a grown man, he gets Leonardo DiCaprio's character to like I said, bend over with his elbows on this platform, on this pulpit, and he spanks him with this, like, if you ever got swats in school, I know I certainly did when I was growing up in Arkansas, but yeah, it was like one of those wooden paddles, right? That one of those legit wooden paddles. But anyway, it was very strange to watch that, especially considering the role that De Niro's character played in the town and how much control and power he had over the financial interests of where that Osage money was going, and it was a worthwhile film. I enjoyed it, but anyway, it was strange because you have this Freemason angle that crops up, and especially considering everything that we cover very often. It again just they kind of shove it down your throat, whether you like it or not. And I think that's a very valuable thing to be aware of. Why would Martin Scorsese write that into the script, you know? And even, provide that additional scene. Very interesting. And just knowing how much I love Eyes Wide Shut and Stanley Kubrick, obviously, and I don't know, you know, one film that I've never watched, by the way, which I'm going to have to, and I'm going to have to, whether I like it or not, is Kubrick's Lolita. I think that's the only Kubrick film I've never watched, and there's a reason, because it makes me uncomfortable. but yeah, so does Eyes Wide Shut. So it's just the fact that there's a young girl in Lolita, and knowing Lolita Express as far as the relation to Epstein, and the implication is just, it's yeah, it's uncomfortable to say the least. But anyway, so Henry Kissinger had another quote that's worth mentioning too, because it goes to show, again, it falls within the framework of this philosophical agenda, and these benchmarks that they have kind of set for this dystopian facilitation. So he says that the world population needs to be decreased by 50%. He claimed that depopulation should be the highest priority of foreign policy towards the third world, because the U.S. economy will require large and increasing amounts of minerals from abroad, especially from less developed countries. Today, America would be outraged if UN troops entered Los Angeles to restore order. Tomorrow, they will be grateful. This is especially true if they were told that there were an outside threat from beyond, whether real or promulgated, that threatened our very existence. It is then that all peoples of the world will plead to deliver them from this evil. The one thing every man fears is the unknown. When presented with this scenario, individual rights will be willingly relinquished for the guarantee of their well-being granted to them by the world government, a new world order. So, anyway, Namrock, all right. Word, brother. I'll probably have to watch. I would rather watch the Kubrick version of Lolita anyway. I didn't know who remade Lolita. I'm curious to know. That would be yeah, that would be interesting in itself, that it was remade. I wasn't even aware of that. But I know it was, clearly it was a book, right? So but anyway, the whole the whole goal of kind of exposing you guys to some of this, more of this, it's really just, I would say, corroborating a lot of what we already are under the impression of, right? And so yeah, I think Kissinger was drunk on adrenochrome when he wrote those rantings. I'm sure he was. um yeah, that he is a very valued commodity in the context of key advisors to presidential administrations, and there's no, that's not by mistake, right? So um let's see, I have quite a bit that we can still talk about, but I'm definitely going to do a stream in the morning as well. So I for sure I wanted to get to, basically, there's a story about Anthony Schatz, Keegan Kline, this connection to the Delphi murders, that I think is, really worth covering, because it kind of, what it really does implicate is that that one of the girls, I think it was Libby, but I'll have to go back through, because one of the, Abby or Libby, was using Snapchat just before. I believe it was Libby. Yeah, so there's a strange connection worth mentioning to the Delphi murders. Like I had, and it's again I think Snapchat played a more prominent role within the context of the disappearance and the ritualized sacrifice of Abby and Libby. And if you're not aware, I don't want to like jump straight into the deep end, so I guess I should just for just a minute or two before, for the sake of time, at least tell you the bare details, bare minimum of this case. So, the murders of Abigail Williams and Liberty German, right, known as the Delphi murders. Of course, this happened February 13th, 2017, basically around 3 a.m., I think. I believe it happened very early in the morning, basically the 14th, right, basically Valentine's Day. And so their bodies were discovered near the Monon High Bridge Trail, part of the Delphi Historic Trails. And Richard Allen was essentially, after the case had been unresolved for over 6 years until 2022, this man, Richard Allen, was arrested and charged with the murders. But of course, none of that, grapples with the reality of the crime scene and the various details that proves the fact that there's strong signatures of Odinism, this, ancient pagan, mythological doctrine, right? This sort of ideology that practices, the belief in this Nordic pantheon of gods. And it's very interesting because there's a strong relationship between the Delphi murders and, well, direct connection between the Delphi murders and an Odinist group called the Vinlanders, which I believe to have been responsible for these ritualistic murders that took place in 2017, which, again, if you haven't listened to the Real True Detective episode, go check it out. It kind of, it really does, I think, make a great case for the fact that this has been entirely misrepresented as far as just the motive behind these murders, and it's due to the fact that it was necessary to be covered up, right? And I think that's because due to the implications of powerful individuals being involved. Clearly, there's also authoritative figures within not only the feds, right, and the federal involvement in Indiana, but also it seems that the prison system itself is overran with Odinist, loyalists, and so, yeah, it's kind of a fascinating story, but it's still something that I think most people are unaware of. A lot of the various details that kind of prove out the fact that the official narrative is entirely, it falls apart on its face. But anyway, so this Anthony Schatz individual is who I kind of discovered throughout my research. He's I'll show a picture of him in a moment because it'll freak you out. Because this guy, on December 6, 2021, basically the Indiana State Police investigating the Delphi murders asked for help from anyone who had contact with the Anthony Schatz account profile, and detectives said the account with the username Anthony Schatz was used on Snapchat and Instagram, among other social media platforms, in 2016 and 17. Now, it's important to mention that only minutes before Libby captured the video of a man known as Bridge Guy, she had posted a picture of her, which of course became the lead suspect, a potential perpetrator. She had posted a picture of her best friend on Snapchat as they walked along the Monon High Bridge. State police say the person behind the account used photos of a male model and portrayed himself as being extremely wealthy and owning numerous sports cars. So, as soon as you see a picture of this guy, yeah, it's not at all what he's presenting himself to be. So, clearly, he's this deceptive notion of portraying himself as extremely wealthy and owning these sports cars and being a male model, far younger than he truly was. It was a way to, lure in young girls, right? And so investigators say the person used the profile to communicate with underage girls, to solicit nude images, and want to know if anyone got requests to get their address or try to meet with them. Police said they've identified the male model that was used in the photos in the account and say that this man is not a person of interest in the Delphi case. Now, you get into the Anthony Shots profile connected to another incident just days after the Delphi murders. Now, this is something that I did not put in the episode, and I thought is well worth discussing because it made me feel like once I looked at the bridge guy again, and I looked at Keegan Klein, the perpetrator behind this Anthony Shots Snapchat profile. It looks way too similar to me. It seems much more plausible that he would have been the alleged the bridge guy, and even the shape of the head looks very, very similar. Striking. It shocked me when I saw it, and so let's see here. So this is according to 13 WTHR, local Indiana news station. I believe that's what it's out of, if I remember correctly. They've done a lot of breaking news on the Delphi case because it's kind of sort of their jurisdiction in a way, right? And so police have identified another incident involving the fake Anthony Shots profile. This one happened less than a week after the Delphi murders. Let's listen to this. After this annoying ad. But yeah, once you discover that this Anthony Shots Keegan Klein was potentially running some sort of enterprise, and well, at the very least, he was being utilized in an enterprise, what seems to be, as a sort of procurer of young girls. That's what it seems is the case here. And so let's listen in here. I believe this is
13 Investigates has learned that the connection of the Delphi murders to the Anthony Shots fake social media profile started with another incident reported to police just days after the bodies of Libby German and Abby Williams were discovered.
Phil, we're getting steps and steps closer to solving this case. Rich Nye is digging deeper into the transcript now of a police interview with Keegan Klein to learn more about what led up to his arrest. Rich?
Well, again, first of all, it's very important to remind you
Look at
that
this
Keegan
guy.
Klein is not charged
Look at this
with
guy.
the killings of Libby German and Abby Williams. Klein has been held in the Miami County Jail for over a year and a half now on 30 charges of child pornography and exploitation. Investigators say he used the fake Anthony Shots social media profile to communicate with underage girls and receive sexually explicit images. Police interviewed Klein at the time of his arrest in August 2020. They questioned him in that interview about another school-age girl that gave her address to the Anthony Shots profile just after the Delphi murders. Klein
Imagine
knew
being
the
that
girl in
kid.
Galveston personally.
The male model.
The police told Klein that she comes home from school, sees this guy with a ski mask looking in her bedroom window directly after giving this address to Anthony Shots.
What? Okay. that is something well worth recognizing in the context of these murders, especially the fact that his home was raided by the feds within days of the murders themselves taking place. Yeah, by the way, I didn't say one thing as far as the public service announcement I had planned sort of to let you guys know at the very least before we finish up here that I did customize the Patreon. There are additional tiers that are available now. I created a community for the patrons on the Patreon that sort of I'm hoping that it will serve as like a maybe I don't know, maybe a sort of platform for workshopping ideas and also directly influencing future content potentially, right? So check that out. And also I created the Rumble as a destination for our live streams here. So at some point I'll definitely get my full and available archived library of all the podcasts that I've done. It'll definitely end up on the Rumble at some point. So, but until that point, it's just, as far as now, just a streaming destination. But definitely go follow the Underclass Podcast Rumble. Subscribe to that. Subscribe to the YouTube. Let's see, did I have one? No, I think that's basically it. And beyond that, yeah, just make sure to what's up, Jose? Make sure you go support Jose, and and support Jules too from Gray Pilled. But that's really the main updates for now. And I'll have a few other updates for you guys in the next few days. But beyond that, that's really just what I wanted to mention. That way, you guys were aware of the fact that we have the Rumble up and running. From here forward, I don't know if I'll be streaming to Jose's YouTube. So just keep that in mind whenever we do these live streams. If it's just me, then it might just be going out to my YouTube, my Rumble, and my Twitter, unless we decide otherwise. So as of now, that's the plan. But yeah, I just want to say, I appreciate you guys as always, and thank you to all the patrons, of course, as well. But all right, let's finish this part, and then we'll get out of here for the day.
As a matter of fact, that's the incident that started.
That is so strange, though, and just the fact that after providing this information to the Anthony Shots profile, she comes home from school and sees this guy with a ski mask looking in her bedroom window directly after giving this address to Anthony Shots.
Personally, the police told Klein that
another thing, and I'm sorry that I keep stopping it, but another thing that I was thinking about was the fact that so one of the girls, I think it was Libby that I just mentioned, was the one using Snapchat just before their disappearances, right? And that is worth understanding, because my mind goes straight to she is potentially letting this individual know, hey, we're here at the meeting place, potentially. Now, this is just some theoretical, this is just what's sort of, the way my mind works, right, is kind of the main reason that I would even suggest that. But still, it makes a lot of sense that just before their disappearance, they got the bridge guy in the snap on accident, right? So it wasn't even like she was aware that there was someone coming down the Monon High Bridge Trail. So anyway, keep that in mind.
She comes home from school, sees this guy with a ski mask looking in her bedroom window directly after giving this address to Anthony Shots. As a matter of fact, that's the incident that started everything else last time. That's how everything started last time, was that incident. And Kagan replied, that's crazy. So here's the timeline and locations in north central Indiana. The bodies of Libby German and Abby Williams were discovered near a trail in Delphi in Carroll County on February 14, 2017. 6 days later, on February 20th, is that incident in Galveston in Cass County, where the girl that Klein knew had given her address to the Anthony Shots profile. She saw a man in a ski mask looking in her bedroom window. And then on February 25th, police searched the home in Peru in Miami County, where Klein lived with his father. They found over 100 photos and videos of underage girls on several electronic devices. Police say the Anthony Shots profile communicated with Libby German hours before her death. Police questioned Klein intensely about anyone else who may have had access to his devices, especially his father. Jerry Anthony Klein goes by Tony and has a criminal history that includes convictions of sexual harassment, battery, and theft. But Indiana State Police will not tell us at this point whether they have questioned Tony Klein about the Delphi murders.
All right. I believe he's been convicted for over 40 years for child pornography. If hold on. Oh my God. Better stop that right now. That was annoying. All right. Yeah, and beyond that, basically, it's I think really we could go a little bit further down the rabbit hole of that article, but honestly, we could end up just covering that a little bit tomorrow before we get into the weeds on a few other things I really wanted to talk with you guys about, which definitely has to do with basically I had kind of in the theme of what I had mentioned about the the Freemason angle and the Killers of the Flower Moon, it really reminded me of the Pilgrims and these strange connections with Trump and the special interest groups standing tall behind the Trump administration. I think is worth mentioning the fact that there are very powerful special interest groups, including that of the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds, and also, as much as they want you to believe that George Soros isn't at all affecting the outcome of this upcoming administration because of Elon's whole, conflict with George Soros. I think that's all by design for the veil of political theater, for us to believe this, alternative, plausible, or like I said, plausible alternative, right, is legitimate. And I don't for one moment believe that to be the case, especially considering Jared Kushner's relationship with Cadre, and which is entirely financed and backed by George Soros, and none of that is by accident. So we're intended to believe that, right, this isn't right one big club, and we ain't in it. But yeah, I'm not quite certain that is the case. So we might get into a little bit of those, powerful dynastic connections to individuals in prominent positions of power in this very moment on the, on the grand scheme, or as far as just the world stage itself. And then really I wanted to also talk about Spartacus International and the Elm Guest House, which has just striking similarities to Kincora, right? And then I had a listener hit me up, I believe it was yesterday, and had mentioned, after listening to the Waco episode, had mentioned the 1985 move bombing. And so I totally forgot about this event. I looked back into it just briefly, and it's worth bringing to the table. It's it's an extraordinary example of just government corruption, but it's sort of ineptitude, but not really. I mean, it's absolute oppression, and right, just it's unfortunately, it's something that you can compare to Waco, and that is, that's the last thing you kind of want to discover, but it is worth mentioning. So we'll probably discuss that. But anyway, as of now, I'll probably just end up talking about all that tomorrow. But I appreciate the hell out of you guys, and I do think that it's worth us going through the rest of that Anthony Schatz article. But because there are a couple other news clips that are worthwhile as well. So we'll just plan on doing that tomorrow. So I appreciate you guys as always. Nothing but love for you. You can follow me at the Underclass Podcast, basically anywhere. You can find the show and on basically all the platforms except for, now I'm on Rumble. So I'm pretty sure we're good to go. I'm probably going to change my podcast publishing platform within the next day or so, which shouldn't affect you guys. It should go fairly smooth. So anyway, that's all coming around the corner. But I appreciate the hell out of you guys, and I hope you have a wonderful Monday. And I'll catch you in the morning.